pretty common confusion, even though it's not the topic for today, but it relates to what we talked about last week, and it relates to what we're going to talk about in week 4. Last week we spent quite a bit of time on leads, and in week 4 we're going to talk about signals. Now, we're not specifically advocating ultimately with your carding, whether you play standard carding, and we use the terms carding and signals interchangeably. Standard carding or upside down carding. A lot of people have asked me about upside down. Are we going to cover upside down? We are going to talk about it in week 4. But there are some things that are the same, that do not change whether you play standard or upside down. And the key thing here is to realize that what we talked about last time, which was leads, and then this other really distinct component of defense, carding, which we might also just call signals. These are two completely different things, but people want to put them together. Say, okay, well, if I'm leading and my agreement is I play upside down, do I lead small from a doubleton instead of big and things like that? And the answer is no, because these two things are totally different. So I want you to tuck leads away in one part of your brain and signals in another, because they are two completely separate elements of defense. Everything we talked about last week, as far as good leads, bad leads, standard leads from length, leads from 3-card holdings, 4-card holdings, 5-card holdings, all of that, none of that is different whatsoever if you get together with a partner and your partner says, hey, you want to play upside down carding? This does not change any of your leads. Lead standards are what they are. And they are, and that is not connected. So I just want you to be clear that those are two completely different things.
I have just one question. When you say leads, are you talking only opening leads, or are you talking?
For the most part, opening leads. Yeah. There are leads that you might make in the middle of a hand, and then there can be a little bit of variability there in which card you lead, but that's not so much related to whether you play standard or upside down. It more has to do with what shows up in dummy. A very common situation. Let's say you are defending no trump, and your partner leads a suit which declare wins at trick 1. And it turns out that there's a singleton of that suit in the dummy. Well, if you happen to gain the lead before your partner does, and you're going to return the suit the partner led, and there's now no more of that suit left in dummy, you always want to lead big, no matter how many cards you have in that suit. We'll try and look at an example of that at some point. It's not on our agenda for today. And the reason for that is if you're trying to trap an honor in declarer's hand, you don't want partner on lead until that honor gets covered. Does that make sense? So let's say it's a, I think a better situation would be, let's say declare started with king, queen, 4th in a suit. And let's say your opening lead came from ace 10 4th. And your partner had something like jack 9, right? Which leaves us a small singleton in the dummy. So if you made a standard 4th best lead and partner put up the jack and declare played the king or queen, great. Declare's actually only entitled to one trick, right? If your partner ends up on lead first, they may not want to lay down the ace because that's going to set up the other honor. But what if you end up on lead? And so you are now reduced to 9/3, right? Because you played your jack at trick 1. So you might be thinking, oh, partner's going to need to know how many cards I have in this suit. Should I play high, middle, low, to try and clear up the count? The problem is, in this situation, you can't afford to do that. So you play the 9, so that partner's not left in the dark. Partner will now know that, because your jack could have come from jack queen, right? Lowest of touching honors. If you now play the 9, partner will know that declare has the queen, okay, but you have the 9 and partner has the 10, so that the ace 10. So that queen is still tracked, right? And the problem is, if you come back small and declare follows small, all of a sudden your partner wins the 10 and they're stuck on lead, right? So like that's a situation where, just slight, where we, where we're not worried about count, or where this is a specific condition because dummy had a singleton, and you wanted to stay on lead until your card got covered by the queen. Then partner can win it and cash the rest of the turns. Does it make sense? So yeah, they're right. So when we get into middle of the hand situations, we can find some exceptions. So that's why I don't want to say, yeah, you always lead big from this number and small from this number and all that. Once we get into the middle of the hand, it can be conditional as much as you would like to give partner count. So, but for today, what we want to get into are active and passive approaches to defense. If you have seen, I did not bring the Hall book with me today, but the one I showed you last week that I mentioned. So in the Hall book, they delineate 5 lines of defense. In this class, we are covering 4 of those. We're doing 2 today. We're doing 2 next week. There is a 5th line of defense that you won't see on your syllabus that we're not specifically going to talk about, and it's the line of defense, if you have the book, that they call Creating Trump Tricks. And it's not that it isn't important, but it, I think, definitely comes up less frequently than all the others. And there's only room for so much in our 4-week class. So we're not, if you happen to have the book and you're wondering, well, why are we talking about only 4 of the 5 lines of defense? But the 4 that we are covering will take care of just about, hopefully, all of your defensive decisions as far as which line of defense you want to adopt. So what we're talking about today, the passive and active, those are actually 2 of the lines of defense from the book. And they are unto themselves specific lines of defense. However, they also kind of apply more broadly in that if you want to create more of a binary situation and you're on opening lead and you've heard this auction and you're like, okay, well, what type of defense should I be, what defensive line should I be taking on based on the bidding I've heard? And I'll look at my hand and all of my clues that are available. More broadly, you are usually adopting either an attacking or active, and again, those terms are used interchangeably, but you're either adopting an active defense or a passive defense. And in an active defense, so for example, next week we're going to talk about a forcing defense. Well, that is its own line of defense, but I would characterize it as active or attacking. A forcing, that is how a defense, that is how a forcing defense, that's how it works. It's very much an attacking approach. So we have like more broad active and passive, but then we have these specific, more specific lines. So we're doing the more specific ones. But even if you can, if you look at the book and you say, oh, okay, I've got all these 5 lines. These are my 5 options when I'm on lead. Which approach do I want to take? Even if you're not sure, if you can't get that specific with it, even if you get to the point of, okay, this bidding calls for a more attacking approach, or this bidding calls for a more passive approach, you're way ahead of the game already. Because essentially what you're trying to figure out is whether or not, whether or not your leads are safe. And adapting the philosophy of, okay, is my aim to be very aggressive here, or is my aim just to not give anything away? And that's the more binary version. So we are going to start with the active defense. And what do we mean by active? Active means that you are leading an honor, or you're leading from an honor, right? Now, some of these are very normal leads, right? I mean, we lead ace from ace king. That's an attacking lead. It's a very normal lead. It's typically a very good lead, but it is an attacking lead because you're banging down an honor. However, one of the things we talked about last time was we said, well, what about leading an ace, an unsupported ace? No king behind it. That's a more dangerous lead, and it's an attacking lead. And we probably don't want to find ourselves doing that very often. And yet, sometimes the bidding calls for it. This is the fun part, right? Where you get your sheet. Oh, good and bad leads. Ace from ace empty, ace from space, right? Yeah, last week I told you that's a bad lead, right? And now today I can give you an example or two where it's a good lead. Just what we need to mix you up appropriately. But that would still be considered an attacking lead because you're banging down an honor. Sequence. King, queen, jack, whatever in a sequence. That's a very normal lead. That's a lead that's easy for you to make because they told you in Bridge 101, all right, if you have a sequence, lead it, right? So, we lead the top of our sequence. That is an attacking lead. It may not look that attacking, it may just look like a normal lead to you, but that would be regarded as an attacking lead. The harder attacking leads to make, king fourth, or king jack fourth, or queen fourth, or queen third. And then typically, when we lead from one of those holdings, we don't lead the honor, but we lead whatever our length lead is, fourth best, or third and fifth, or whatever our agreement with partner is. For many of you, I assume it's fourth best most of the time. And we lead small from that honor. Or here, if you only have 3 cards in the suit, normally small. Those are attacking leads. And so what we want to do today is look at the situations that call for an attacking lead. Because I would gather that while that's a pretty easy lead for you, and that's a pretty easy lead for you, these over here, there's going to be some hesitation, right? Especially if somebody stuffed some nonsense in your ear many years ago, like, you should never lead from a king. That's just wrong. Never do that. Never lead away from a king. I'm going to tell you, how many people have asked me that? And they're like, is that good advice? I mean, and I say, no. Well, I say it depends. Sometimes it's a bad idea to lead away from a king. That'll be the second half of class today, when you don't want to lead away from a king. But no, the true answer is it depends. It's situational. And this is where it is on you to really, to pay attention to the auction and let it guide you and figure out whether you should be attacking or not. The idea behind an attacking defense is that you are trying to set up tricks before they go away. And this probably happens, well, I mean, fourth best is a normal lead against no trump. And I don't think people have as much trouble leading away from an honor against no trump because that's pretty standard. But against suits, it's tricky. So the idea is, like, let's say you're leading from a holding like this, like king jack fourth. When is this a good lead? Anytime partner holds the ace or the queen, it's a good lead, right? Because if partner holds the ace, they win the ace and return the suit, and if declare has the queen, it's trapped in front of your king jack, right? Even if partner has only the queen, no ace, at least partner's queen forces the ace and sets up your king jack as winners. And the idea is you're trying to get these winners set up before they go away. Because that will often happen in a suit contract, right? We've seen it all too many times. We don't get side suit winners set up, we get off to the wrong lead, and declare has another good suit, and here come the pitches, right? And the thinking behind, and this is, I think, where you'll really see it once we get to our full examples, is a lot of times when you make this attacking lead in the situation that calls for it, it doesn't cost even if declare wins the trick cheaply. My partner doesn't have the ace or the queen, and now it looks to you like, oh, I gave away a trick by leading away from my king. But if declare had a running suit and all those losers were getting pitched anyhow, you didn't cost yourself anything. Those are, and so your goal is to try and figure out, okay, what are those situations? What are those situations where it is unlikely to cost for me to lead away from an honor? Okay, how do we know when we're supposed to go active? Because that's the trick, right? We know how to do it. It's a matter of when does the situation call for it? Well, your handout has some conditions, things that you look for in the bidding. And I have actually three, I know there's more than that on the list. And all of that stuff, by the way, is in the whole book. But I would say probably the big three. Declare side suit. So if the auction reveals that your opponents have a suit, not the trump suit, but a different suit that it looks like either declare or dummy may have length in, if you can tell that that side suit is breaking, and our first example will actually be, we'll show this. That calls for an attacking defense.
Can you define breaking?
Splitting favorably. It'll be a little more clear in just a minute here when I get the handout. Yeah, I should. Like, sometimes you can tell when one of the suits they bid is not going to split well for them. We'll just say splitting friendly.
For you, for the declare,
For them.
for them.
Yeah. Vigorous bidding. Now, maybe some of you bid vigorously when you shouldn't. But like if somebody, like let's say the opponents ultimately just settle for game, but they bid in a fashion that suggests that one of them has slam enters, even if the slam try gets shot down. Well, in that case, they are very confident that they're making their game because they're looking for slam. They think there may be more. As opposed to something like this. So I open a no trump, you bid Stamen. I show you 4 spades. You raise the 3 spades. That's just invitational, right? Not game forcing. You accept and bid 4 spades. Or better yet, maybe you hem and haw and sigh heavily and say, ah, what the hell, and then bid 4 spades. Right? All right. Now, is that a vigorous auction or is that a slightly reluctant auction? Right? Okay, so that would not be vigorous, right? The opponents are not, they just invited. And while they ended up in game, it doesn't look like they did so with great confidence, right? Whereas if we take out the invitation and they just shoot out 4 spades, now they didn't make a slam try, but that is a more aggressive auction than the first one, right? So we can start to make these distinctions. If they are on the borderline of slam, whatever tricks you have coming, and it sounds like that's very few, are probably going away if you don't take them early. So you want to attack. And then another one is if there's an indication of a long running suit. Does anybody here play gambling 3-note with any of their partners? For those of you who don't, do you know how it works? Do you know what the hand looks like? A gambling 3-no, what is typically done is somebody just opens 3-no, but it's not strong in a high card sense. What it typically shows is it's like a good, well, solid, usually solid or very close to solid. Certainly ace, king, queen. Could probably get away without having the jack. But it's something like a 7-card minor headed by ace, king, queen, a source of tricks. And the whole idea behind gambling 3-no is that if partner has, and partner can usually tell what your suit is, too. Because if they have scattered honors in other suits, they know that your suit is probably the one where they have a small singleton or a doubleton or something like that, right? But they have no honors. And then partner has to judge, okay, do I have enough in the way of stoppers in all the side suits that I can leave partner in 3-no? That's why it's called gambling. And then if you catch partner with a bad hand, and you have what looks like it might be a problem, an unstopped suit, then responder bids 4 clubs, and then you correct 4 clubs to 4 diamonds if you have a diamond suit. It's to get you out of no trouble.
Do you have to alert that?
Yeah, it's an alertable treatment. So, but it doesn't come up very often, but it's something that people play. All right. And the other thing with the gambling 3-no is that it's very common for people to have the agreement, no outside ace or king. So they've got their good 7-card club suit or good 7-card diamond suit, but they typically have nothing higher than a queen anywhere else. So it paints a good picture of their hand. All right, well, what if it goes 3-no, all pass, and you find yourself on lead? What are you supposed to lead? The answer is you make the most attacking lead you can. If you have an ace, you should play it. Even if it's from ace empty, something we say, and even against no trump, which we would not normally do against no trump, right? But why do you want to lead an ace against 3-no? Because the one thing you know is if you lead an ace against 3-no, is that unless you're Cheryl and you figured out a way to lose that trick, you're going to be on lead again at trick 2.
I was taught by the best. Taught by the very best.
Lay down your ace, get a look at the dummy, get a signal from partner to get a little help if you need it, and then figure out if you've gotten off to the best lead. Look, you might lead it. Maybe they decided to sit for 3-no and they don't have all the suits stopped, right? Well, you want to look at this dummy and figure out what you're supposed to do at trick 2. And remember that declare